What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, but you can call me a wannabe error by the way I'm bringing you a mid-ass build at the launch of a season just for that sweet ad revenue. In all seriousness though, no hate to Error. Of all the content creators, he inspired my content more than anyone. I just wanted to make builds and break down damage numbers, and he was the guy doing that before anyone else. But as for the build, I've wanted to make this video for over a year. You can see in the background gameplay that I'm using this build on the Witness, and that was last June because I figured you'd be able to float above the Witness's attacks and deal damage with Whisper of the Worm. It turns out I was sort of right. You can in Excision, but you can't in the Raid. In the Raid, you will hit immunes if you're too high above the damage platform, but float too low and you will still get hit by his attacks and die. Regardless, that doesn't mean this build is totally useless. Far from it, in fact. This is just one example, but it's actually a really fun playstyle. As you can see from the background gameplay, I was using this way back in Season of the Witch, and I also wanted to make a build video on it back in February, but Bungie did some whack shit with the Nether, so it wasn't really viable there, and it isn't a great GM build either. So even though I really like this build, I couldn't really make it shine in any relevant activities. But in something like Onslaught or a mode similar to it, this build goes very hard.
Oh, I'm doing damage, boys.
Oh, baby.
Awesome one today.
See if I take damage. Oh my god, it's working! Look up.
I would, but I want to deal damage to the boss.
Okay, that's
You're
fair.
damaging him from there?
Yeah, bro.
And it doesn't hit, and you don't get hit by the...
Nope. I'm taking 0 damage, and I'm just effing him up. I got my whole Whisper, everything off.
Wait, that's
so his shots don't hit you at all.
No, I took 0
That's
damage.
That's funny as
And
shit.
you were able to deal damage to him.
I got all my Whisper shots off without, like, having it on ADS.
That's nice.
Also, I had this awesome thumbnail commissioned by the GOAT Beat VFX. So I figured it'd be a shame to let it go to waste. So yeah, because of that, I wanted to come back and make a video on this because I've always loved my fashion for this build, and I'm nostalgic for this exotic. It was one of the first exotics I got to drop in D2 Vanilla, and because I was a complete noob, I would rock it just for the aesthetic with my Devour Warlock build. Yes, Guardians, I was once a clueless blueberry, just like we all were. But you gotta start somewhere, right? And funnily enough, I'm about to be a clueless blueberry again because of all the crazy system changes that came in Edge of Fate. But anyways, let's get on to the build. It centers around the newly reworked Wings of Sacred Dawn. The exotic description is from before the launch of Edge of Fate, but this patch note here shows us it got a bit of a buff by the time that you'll be watching this video. So now, enemies are less accurate when they're shooting at you and Tome of Dawn is active. This is how Manticore works, or the amplified changes that they made. So this just means that we'll have more survivability. On top of that, you get damage resistance from Tome of Dawn, and now you will also get restoration when you get solar kills, as well as it reloading all your weapons. So my preferred setup with this build is to use Vex Mythoclast to mow down enemies. It's an exotic primary, so it hits like a truck, but then you also have the sniper mode, which absolutely deletes champions. Then in my heavy slot, I would usually run a solar rocket launcher. The whole theme of this build is to turn you into a chopper gunner, and the utility of Vex Mythoclast just fits the theme the best, and then you have a rocket launcher as backup, essentially acting as your missile strike to nuke high health targets. In all honesty, outside of GMs or dogshit activities like the Nether with weird health balancing, this build actually rips. If you take it into Onslaught, you will just rain down on enemies and they won't really be able to do much to you. Shriekers are about your only threat. For aspects, I paired it with Heat Rises, of course. You hold your grenade to activate Heat Rises, which allows you to fire your weapons, melee, or throw grenades while gliding. And then Final Blows while airborne increase the duration of Heat Rises and grant melee energy. The melee energy it provides is actually unreal, and because we are far away from enemies, we want to use Celestial Fire. This applies Scorch to enemies, and it also provides us with Radiant from Ember of Torches. The other aspect I would use is Icarus Dash. I love the in-air mobility that having 2 dodges provides you, but one underrated thing about Icarus Dash that not a lot of people know about is while airborne, rapidly defeating targets with your super or weapons actually grants you Cure. So this helps a ton with survivability. But thanks to the rework to Wings of Sacred Dawn giving us restoration, this is less needed now. I also came up with this build before Hellion was ever in the game, so if you wanted to run Hellion, then you absolutely could do that as well. I of course run Phoenix Dive because you won't be using your Rift in the air, and Phoenix Dive has a short cooldown, so you can get a bunch of Phoenix Dives to keep proccing Hellion over and over. The choice is yours. Again, I really like the movement from Icarus Dash, but you do you. I also would use Daybreak as my super because just like Rifts, Well doesn't lend itself to aerial gameplay. But now Song of Flame is in the game, and it's an exceptional super. It provides you with Radiant as well as damage resistance and really fast melee cooldowns. But it also applies Scorch to solar and kinetic weapons, and since we use a ton of solar weapons with this build, then it could be a great option here. I mean, I made a video talking about why Song of Flame is the best super in the game, so it's never really a bad option to use it. Again, it just comes down to the content that you're playing and what will be most effective for the given situation. For fragments, I already mentioned Ember of Torches, but it's just an amazing fragment for giving us Radiant with our melee. Ember of Ashes could also be awesome for applying more Scorch stacks, especially if you use Hellion instead of Icarus Dash. Ember of Benevolence is absolutely goated, and you can potentially be applying a lot of Cure with your Phoenix Dives, and Radiant with your melees, so in team play, this is a wonderful option. In my old version of the build, I would run Ember of Empyrean to extend Resto and Radiant, but with the rework, this may be redundant. Solar Weapon Final Blows will give you Restoration, and we will get Radiant lots because we get a ton of melees thanks to Heat Rises, so feel free to skip this fragment for now. Ember of Searing will give us more melee energy and create a Fire Sprite for defeating scorched targets, and Singeing will give us tons of class ability for scorching targets. So after talking through this build and the fragments, I'm convinced. Take off Icarus Dash and run Hellion with Singeing and Searing and just spam melees and Phoenix Dives and mow everything down with your solar weapons. Then Ember of Torches for Radiant and Ashes for more Scorch application. Or drop Ashes for Benevolence in a team setting if you want to spam your abilities even more. I've talked about this in past videos, but when I make these, I give my reasoning for why I choose what I choose. And in theory crafting this New Age version, that was the best version that I came up with. So again, you can run my old version with Icarus Dash and Empyrean, but in the new age of Edge of Fate, with the new buffs that we have, I think this will be the best version of the build. But as I always say, choose what suits your playstyle the best. Speaking of, I know not everyone has Vex Mythoclast, so a great alternative could honestly be Xenophage. Bungie, field prep catalyst for this thing when? I just love Xeno, and it will be great at proccing solar kills to get your resto going. But it is a heavy weapon, so yeah, you may run low on ammo quickly. Polaris Lance is another goated solar weapon, and it's primed to shred this season as well. Honestly though, just run whatever solar weapons that you want. A Baron Action could also go really hard with this build, Ariana's Vow or Icebreaker. Hell, you could even do a Bleak Watcher setup but with Song of Flame on Prismatic with Icebreaker. It would honestly go crazy. Then pair that with Arcane Needle melees, it could be a lot of fun, but you wouldn't have Heat Rises. But the world is your oyster. Fixed Odds is a great choice if you want to use your machine gun like a primary, and that would also fit the Chopper Gunner theme here. Skyburner's Oath and Jotun could also be a good time. And with hand cannons being featured on the new artifact, and with it being able to spread Scorch on kill to proc fragments like Searing and Singeing, Sunshot is looking like a wonderful choice. But when isn't it? That gun just slaps. Onto mods, I'm not going to go too deep into it. It centers around using solar weapons, so solar siphon mods, solar weapon surges, time dilation, stuff like that. I think the old mobility stat is now a stat that improves weapon damage, so spec into that as much as possible. You can go with solar reserve mods on your chest piece too for even more ammo for your heavy and special weapons. And finally, we have the artifact mods. I waited to make this video until the final TWID before the expansion was out showcasing the new artifact mods. So while I obviously haven't played with them, here are the ones that I would use to maximize this build's potential. First up, you have Anti-Barrier, Scout, and Pulse, so Polaris Lance is back on the menu. Unstoppable Sidearm and Hand Cannon. Again, Sunshot is a monster of a hand cannon and would be great with this build as it has explosive rounds to mitigate damage fall off. Unstoppable Sniper, so you could use one of my favorite weapons in Icebreaker even though this build lacks stasis synergy, but again, you could throw on Bleak Watchers and Song of Flame on Prismatic and make your own build with Wings of Sacred Dawn if you wanted to go this route for some fire and ice synergy. Or you could go with one of the all-time sniper rifle goats and Whisper of the Worm. I just love this weapon. Fever and Chill is a must run as you can get Radiant by getting rapid precision hits with a solar weapon, Elemental Benevolence in a team setting, and you will be getting your Phoenix Dive back constantly. Elemental Coalescence would be great to make fire sprites to give you even more grenade energy, and I'm not sure how Elemental Daze exactly works, but it sounds like if you stun a champ with a solar weapon, it will cause an ignition, so this mod will be amazing with solar builds. Or it will just apply Scorch, but either way, run it with this build. Again, if you went the fire and ice route with Prismatic, you could run Cauterized Darkness to deal even more solar damage on stasis or strand debuff targets, which would be super easy to do with Arcane Needle melees and Bleak Watchers. Radiant Shrapnel will cause even more solar havoc and pairs perfectly with this build because you will always be Radiant and always be getting kills with solar weapons. This will be especially nice with Sunshot. Elemental Overdrive pairs amazingly with Elemental Coalescence. You will get lots of fire sprites, and now when you do, you will deal increased solar weapon damage. I don't know how much this buff is, but free damage is free damage. You could go Shield Crush too to get faster and harder hitting grenades, but I've played with this build a lot in the past and it's very weapon focused, so no need to build into more grenade damage. This is more suited to something like Starfire Protocol, which will also be a beast in Edge of Fate. But you do you. And those are my suggestions for artifact mods to pair with this build. And with that, that's basically everything you need to know to make this build work. I hope you found the video helpful and informative, and I hope you enjoy the build if you decide to use it. I may or may not make a hunter build. I'm kind of undecided at this point. I truly have no desire to play the game, and making that build would require me to log on after the update because the build I have is another one that I wanted to make back in February. But now it has received a ton of changes, so I would have to test them all out. I do still like making fun build videos and sharing them with the community, but I just don't really like having to play the game. So maybe I will post that, maybe not. Your guess is as good as mine. As for this one, that's it. I really enjoyed making this video and I hope you enjoyed watching it. I hope you're enjoying the Edge of Fate and I wish you the best of luck if you're doing the day 1 raid. I miss you all and take care.